Hello, everyone. It's so great to see you all today. My name is Lindsay Seraphin, and I am the VP of Customer Success here at Snyk, and I'm based out of the Boston area. So as we all know, building out a modern AppSec program from scratch is something that can take years to develop. And the three gentlemen I'm honored to be speaking with today are in various stages of this evolution. So today we're going to be hearing about some of the lessons they've learned so far in their AppSec journey, strategies that have worked for them, and how they measure the success of their program. So I'm going to start by having each of our panelists introduce themselves. If you could just tell us, a little about a name, a little bit about your organization, and where you are in your AppSec journey. We'll start with Gagan.
Hello all, my name is Gagan Bhatia. I head the security delivery at 10x Future Technologies Limited. We are a 5 years young company, and we deliver a cloud-native core banking platform for our financial services customer to solve the banking needs for current and be ready for the future. In terms of where we are in our AppSec journey, we have been aligning to the 10x mission of doing the things 10x faster. So we have been constantly working and evolving our AppSec program as inception of our project. So that's pretty much from my side. Thank you.
All right, and next we have Nick.
I'm Nick Vincent. I'm head of DevSecOps at Pearson. My team is responsible for developer security training and implementing security engineering practices across our product teams. We're 3 years now into our security engineering journey. We started with a subset of kind of business critical teams, and now we're rolling out this initiative across all our product teams.
All right, and Stephan.
Hello, everyone. I am Stephan. I'm the Application Security Product Manager here at Skybetting and Gaming. I am responsible for effectively driving our AppSec as a product across all the various teams, working closely together with all of our, not just our development teams, but equally our architecture teams, our delivery teams, our training and awareness teams, and all teams throughout both security and non-security. And we are currently just finished off our year 2 of our application security journey, and it has very much been one of discovery, fail fast, and constant evolution, not working with one unit at a time, but rather tackling problems as they came, tackling challenges as they came, discovering what we already had in place versus what we didn't and where we needed to grow.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. So we'll start with kind of looking back. What were some of the challenges you were looking to overcome when you were starting out this program? If anyone wants to jump in.
Yeah, happy to jump in. So I think, literally, if you go back 3 years, how security was treated in Pearson was very siloed. So we had a separate siloed SecOps team, risk team, and we were new as a security engineering team. And there wasn't too much collaboration with the development teams. They were kind of the tools were identified by security, what they were going to use and how they were going to be implemented. So what we tried to do is partner with those teams so that we can get kind of developer first requirements and to get solutions which fit in with our tech stack and our engineering practices. We also worked with the teams to introduce security as just normal development activities, same as QA was, and operations via DevOps. So breaking down the silos was kind of the first major challenge we had to overcome.
So breaking down the silos between security and developers and engineering and bringing everyone to the table together. Is that a similar challenge, Gagan and Stephan? Were there any other challenges that you were up against when you were rolling out your programs?
So I would like to echo that. So it's just very pleasing to hear from Nick on this one. So yes, breaking the silo. This is a classic industry problem. There is a old ways of doing things. So there used to be a siloed function which used to just scan things and tell them you need to fix it, and then it's a constant battle of prioritization and all. So tackling it with the need of giving the developers a tool. So I would just extend it by saying that there's another thing which you need to focus when you're delivering your AppSec program is how do you cater for your developer experience. So we talk about a customer experience, but there is another angle which you need to always think about. is how do you give developers the set of, the tools or the guidance or the processes they need to do their job. So yes, it's a very similar way. It's like, giving them the handy set of tools and a very, consistent set of guidance on how do you deliver stuff. So that's pretty much, I think, so the soul of our AppSec program as well.
So it's not enough just to break down the silos and get the relationship and the communication. We also need to give really concrete and actionable tools and processes to help move that program along across many people. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, absolutely.
How about you, Stephan?
So to add on top of that, as I mentioned previously, for us, it was very much a case where there was a need for an AppSec. Everyone sort of said, you need to do something within the AppSec space, but without really little clue of what is AppSec, in fact. And then for us, for myself, it was very important to even just sit down at the very beginning and basic and just ask yourselves, what does AppSec mean for us? What is important for us? What are the strategies for us? What are some of the principles for us? And a lot of the time it came down to we want this to be in line. We want to learn from our past mistakes and be in line. So this is very much where the silo breakdown silos comes in and communication comes in. But then equally, and how do we want to deliver these things? And it was, again, one of the things where I always knew that as a previous developer, developing AppSec program means improvements, means technical improvements, which quite often directly conflicts with delivery, right? You always have you can deliver something that brings us money, or we can spend some time improving something. And then there's always this fight. And instead of, I did try, I just put it out there, but I always knew that was going to fail. It was just gave me leverage to say, I tried it your way, but of course my delivery wasn't picked. Of course, something else was prioritized. So then immediately went on to my real plan, which was driving in a continuous improvement style, which is something that even as a developer in the past was something that I already learned those lessons decades ago. This challenge has not changed in the industry, and is exactly the same within the InfoSec world. Is that you have to drive things through continuous improvements, and this is then where we took, okay, where are we now? What are the current challenges? Break everything down and make it such that each week you're improving something. You can say at the end of the week, I've done a little bit. I've solved a little bit of a problem. I've moved a little stone forward. I'm not there yet. I can't actually, quite often, I can't even say, hey, this is my massive updating of the week. I've just done a small little bit, but I know in the back of my head, it won't pay off now. It will start to pay off as more and more rocks get moved, and over the coming months and years in our journey now. Once you stand back and view it, suddenly you're saying, actually, we've done a lot in the last 2 years. Yeah, but you have to move back. But that is good, equally, and on to your next, that then sort of helps in measuring success, is that you're able to stand back and sort of say, yes. So for me, it's very much continuous improvements.
Got it. So this mindset. So instead of it being all at once, we're saying, what incremental improvements can we make slowly over time, week by week, that move us in the direction of our longer term goal? And that is a great segue into the metrics. So how do you define the success of your program? What are the metrics that you're tracking for your own organization? And then what are the metrics that you're reporting up to, the more senior management team at your organizations to help show that your program is effective?
Yeah, I can share some thoughts on this. We broke a traditional barrier on the vulnerabilities as part of our work and commitment on AppSec. So traditionally, people don't talk about vulnerabilities. They're very hesitant on this one. So vulnerabilities do exist. Either the people don't know them, or maybe they don't want to be transparent on them. So one thing which we do and deliver as part of our AppSec program is we do deliver a full visibility of every vulnerability which exists in the platform. And in terms of every monthly release cadence, we do deliver it to our clients. And in terms of we have a very strong sort of processes in place that we do not allow the vulnerability seeping into the environment. And this is, again, by the constant improvement while giving developers the set of tools, and we do break well. So in terms of the key question to answers, there are certain things which you have to traditionally do, the numbers. So we don't typically deal with like numbers. So it's more around the numbers you address. So like numbers of residual vulnerabilities which are left in the platform, rather than hey, you discovered this one, but you fixed it. So we don't traditionally report on those set of numbers, but we do report on like anything which is which is unfixable, because there are certain things which is like no patch available. Then it becomes a risk discussion of every such vulnerabilities on what are the compensating controls you can add and how you can mitigate those set of risk in a different way. Where there is a technical limitation on this. So we do report on the residual vulnerabilities. We do report on the numbers which were identified. We also report on certain things around. We give these fixing of the vulnerabilities in hand of our developers, with also the ability to certain vulnerabilities where they deem that this is not appropriate, or that it's not applicable, or it's a false positive in this context, to override it. But we also run the immutable scans. So we do report on and we validate certain things where to catch any process errors or like a human errors where somebody have accidentally ignored a vulnerability, and then it should not allow. So it gives us a constant feedback loop of how we have to educate our developers or improve our processes. So there are certain things around residuals and any process improvement KRIs what we measure on regular basis.
Got it. So vulnerabilities found, vulnerabilities fixed, vulnerabilities not fixed, and then sounds like some goals around process improvement.
Yeah.
How about you, Nick?
I think vulnerability metrics are important, but there's a big kind of asterisk and proviso there that there needs to be context around them, and you need to ensure things like coverage, and you're not just reporting false positives. So I think the most important thing for us was identifying what the security requirements were for a project. So before, when you had siloed security teams, they'd be saying, cool, right, implement our security scanning tooling that we've got, not knowing if that was fit for purpose or not. If you're doing virtual machine-based vulnerability scanning and your product and your development team is using containers or serverless functions, that's not going to help you. So I think the most important thing there was when we introduced threat modeling for the teams we were working with, to get good quality of security requirements which were relevant for the team. So we carry out threat modeling activity, and the output would be a specific set of risks with countermeasure requirements for that team, and we report on the implementation state to see where they were getting there. Through that activity, we'd be able to identify what the right type of vulnerability testing was, whether that's static analysis, container vuln scanning, host-based vuln scanning, dynamic analysis, secret scanning, that sort of thing. And by combining that information with the vulnerability stats, we're able to get much better context around that information. And on the thing of continuous improvement as well, I think once you've got those activities defined, you can focus on iterating and improving them. So if you're looking at something like static analysis, it's shifting left, getting the feedback to developers as quickly as possible, running that in pipelines as early as possible, and also looking at kind of plugins for IDEs, so they're getting the feedback as they're developing. We're kind of tracking three types of security metrics mainly: what we call the design-in requirements, which is the output from the threat modeling; what we call our operational metrics, which is vulnerability stats, and really we're looking for trend. And we have security maturity kind of assessment, which we continuously update, and that gives context around the vulnerability metrics we're getting from teams.
Got it. So what I was hearing from you there is that each development team almost needs a unique approach. So it's based on some characteristics of that team. So it's not just a one size fits all when it comes to the metrics. Stephan, is that something you're doing as well? I'm super curious about that team-based approach, and how do you report up those results by team, knowing that there's always going to be variability based on the technology that they're working with, based on just so many different factors that go into how your developer teams are organized.
Yeah, and so for me, for us, it's very much a case of on first sight, it's like, oh wow, we're definitely not as far as Nick. Wow, Nick, it's just this really sounds very professional. Sounds like you're there, you've reached the goal. And for us, it's very much a case of we've always been quite hesitant about metrics because there are so many factors. It almost comes down to using metrics. You can say anything that meets your own goals. but it is just your own goal, saying, hey, look how good I am based on these metrics. But you can also, based on metrics, prove that the world is flat. You just have to pick the right ones at the right time and that sort of then spin them correctly. So for us, it's very much been a case of going back to the initials. Like, we spent extra time figuring out those strategies, those principles, and then rather than putting out metrics on the same set every single week, and then having to go back and actually doing proper context because somebody misconstrued them, just it was very much a case of those continuous messages of even just if it's a case of a person in a meeting says something positive about the AppSec program. To us, that is our reporting. That means that the program is effective because people are talking about it. We are in a position where we are changing things for the better. Whenever we are doing new projects, because this is where most of what's reporting actually for us does come in, it's about being able to increase the quality. So even just asset management and even just discovery piece, just saying, we now know something we didn't know yesterday. That is something you really, I can't stress enough the importance of just being able to highlight more people are using the tool. That doesn't matter if there's lots of vulnerabilities. People almost need to forget to celebrate the positiveness of we're moving forward. Yes, in InfoSec world, yes, you're now showing red numbers where previously you aren't, but it's a positive thing. And it's something where almost I have to turn around towards InfoSec and saying, you need to change your reporting. That shouldn't be touted as negative. It should be touted as something positive, because it is changing people for the better, and it's trying to get people to think about things differently, which is exactly what we want. And that is where any kind of metrics that has to simply reflect that, which for us then most of our metrics then indeed fall in line with the other two, with then the nuance of saying, think about your messages that you're trying to put out there. Don't just put metrics out there because.
Yeah, it makes total sense, right? You want to set yourself up for success and set yourself up for wins. And sometimes that starts by just talking about the visibility and talking about what you found, and kind of celebrating some of those early wins that come with the improved visibility. We hear that a lot among Snyk customers as well. You're not going to be auto fixing overnight. Awesome. Well, I guess another question to ask the group, as you're looking back on your journey, what advice would you give to the next program manager who's starting a program from scratch? If there's some specific lessons learned that you have for your program, or one piece of advice that, I wish I had known this when I had started my program 2-3 years ago.
Yeah, happy to jump in here. So I think initially start small. So focus with experienced security engineers and use them to embed with a team or a small set of teams, and use that really as a test bed to define what your security engineering practices are. Things like how you do threat modeling. And if you get those right on with a small number of teams, that really puts you in a much better position to be able to scale that out. So you're not troubleshooting as you're scaling out across tens or hundreds of teams. I think the other thing there is the two most important things we've identified really is being able to identify requirements. So that threat modeling activity per product, and also it's about training developers and getting the knowledge for secure coding practices in there. All the tools are doing is help you feed that knowledge back kind of in a direct and mechanism. So you want to use those, leverage those tools where you can to be able to identify things as they're going, but actually carrying out training exercises, teaching developers how to independently test to make sure that the security controls they're putting in place are effective, and just have that as an everyday activity, the same as creating unit tests or functional tests are.
That's awesome. How about you, Gagan?
I would pretty much echo that. So start small. Don't start selecting the tools before you understand the problem space. So it's a classic issue. It's people pre-select certain set of things and say just retrofit it. So it's important to understand what stuff you would be building and where are the things, and you align the security as part of your development lifecycle, rather than the entire work of the AppSec programs goes around with just trying to implement a tool. So that's important to understand the requirement. Also, pretty much on the threat modeling, what Nick just mentioned, we also, started doing. We are on a journey. I will not say that we are completed, but one thing which, again, from like past life and the existing implementation, the guidance would be, don't make the developers or the set of people like a slave of any sort of like a specific way of doing the things. Let them be creative. Let them start understanding what's good looks like, what's right, what's wrong. It doesn't need to be 100 pages of you do the things in a certain way. It's just start coaching people the bare minimum thing, and then taking them on a journey. So then you can have your AppSec function is as strong as your development community. So if you have 500 developers, you have a 500 strong AppSec team, versus you would always be constantly going into a fight with, unless you take the users into that journey.
It's a great lesson on developer empowerment and empowered teams. I think that's awesome.
Yep.
How about you, Stephan?
Trying to think of something to actually add for myself, that just letting go, as Gagan said, is simply the most important thing. Like it is you have to let your developers, they are the ones who are building this stuff. It's with them that sits all the knowledge. So let go. Don't even try to control, and you'll actually see, even though as counterintuitive it sounds, it'll make things a lot better. Things like selecting tools is actually where I would deviate. So I'm actually glad that we did tool selection from the get-go, because for us, it was just in line with one of our biggest company principles. Our CTO really strongly believes in this, that you can only improve that which you can test. So naturally, our first thing was, let's get some tools that create visibility, that we can point at something, that we can just scan, and we can learn from it. You can then see, oh, okay, now there's go. So for us, plus it just takes time. At least it takes time, get all those requirements in place. So get early. It'll at the same time, you'll discover some things along the way, and then multi-track. AppSec program is all about multi-tracking all different work streams, and then over time you'll start to see the links between them, and you'll start to streamline them out. And the final bit is question the InfoSec standards. So one thing at the very beginning, I did read up on sort of some of the InfoSec Bibles, as I'm started calling them. I'm like, you should do this. This is your maturity model for AppSec, and this is how things should be done. And just saying, okay, these are things that I could do. Now try them out to turn down. It's very much something that has helped us throughout everything. And yeah, when it comes to the continuous improvement, for example, one of the ways that we are brought in threat modeling isn't actually by doing it at the very beginning. We actually brought in threat modeling through testing, because I said, if I want to improve my testing, I actually need to know what I'm testing. How do I find out what I'm testing? Well, I need to find out what could possibly go wrong. Where have we implemented controls? Okay, how do I get those? Hang on, that sounds a lot like threat modeling. Let's do some threat modeling at the end, which then brings out assumptions, because people make assumptions about, oh, we've done this thing, and this is important in our world. That's important in our world. And you start to bring them together. And again, you start to create visibility, which then makes people question, maybe we should do this earlier next time. Yes, we should. Yes, we definitely should. And that is, again, how you sort of bring in, through these unconventional ways, you start to bring in those improvements over time. So again, question everything. Don't be hesitant to fail fast.
Absolutely. Challenging that status quo, because it's a new world, right? And some of the older models don't apply to a modern environment. All right, now probably got time for maybe one or two more questions. I'd love to know, what was an aha moment or a milestone for you in your journey, like something kind of tangible that you can look back and say, like, wow, this that we've really moved the needle. We've really made a lot of progress in our program.
And there are
sorry, go on, Gagan.
So there are the few things which does, and it combines with the the modern ways of doing tasks in general. Like if you're working on a cloud native set of environment, and the modern CI/CD set of building practices and delivering. There are a few things which, again, the structure apply. So I would not take a credit that everything was just because of the AppSec it happened. But the certain set of vulnerabilities, like a new patch discovered and or a new vulnerability discovered in a package, and it immediately had a red flag across that certain set of components which are using it. So the most important thing is a vulnerability being discovered and getting information within no time, and a daily scan do pick it up, like there is a high vulnerability and a visibility of these are the certain set of microservices. This is exact lines of code where these components are vulnerable. Having that information in a span of the day vulnerability is released and the vulnerability address is the same day. So AppSec have evolved a lot. If I look back that statement and 10 years back, what we used to do. So that certainly I can say a big aha moment over a decade. But it has been a constantly iterating over every day. So I wouldn't say something between the last 6 months, but if I look back from where we were in AppSec and where we have achieved or where we have reached, it has been an amazing journey. So looking back is a really aha moment for me.
Great.
I have a specific one, which is maybe micro-focusing a little bit, but I think it was a good example because it represented kind of collaboration across lots of different teams and groups here at Pearson. So a key problem we had was authentication authorization across our cloud environment. So we had static keys which were being used and not always consistently following rotation requirements. And therefore, there's a real risk of them being publicly exposed and then us not being able to keep track of which ones were exposed. So something identifying security requirements for authentication and authorization. These need to be role-based access control following least privilege principle and using dynamically generated short-lived tokens for that. So as the security engineering team working with all the product teams and our kind of internal identity team and the team who manage the AD, we defined this process for how we have user roles defined across all the cloud accounts. There's a set of approval groups, so direct line manager, and then the people who own the group who own those roles for different job roles, so developer, operations engineer, manager, that sort of thing, and then create a process, a self-service request process where a user would go and request what access they needed, and that would be granted across all the cloud environments. I think that was a game changer in terms of how we could be confident that we could get a hold on locally provisioned users and static access keys across hundreds of cloud environments.
That's great. It gives you that scale too. Stephan, anything to add?
Yeah, for myself, and a bit of same position here as Nick is because we've been moving the needle ever so slightly. It's really difficult and challenging sometimes just to step back and going, where exactly did it all change? Because it was so all nuanced. I think for myself, one of the main aha moments actually happened quite recently, and brings a bit on the story I just talked about earlier. It's around us introducing threat modeling. It's actually happened very indirectly, because I start off with just going with, so we have successfully managed to interface with all operations managers. We have established that culture of them owning all of the operations stuff, and they're really involved and they all care. And I've done the same thing with our developers, and to the point where it was actually our developers who chose Snyk. I didn't do anything. I just turned around, asked for the money, please, and made the business presentation, and that was about it. But it was our developers who chose all this. So that all got going, and I've turned around to them saying, you're free, do whatever you want. So they all got on board and they're all happy about it. And then sort of the last group was our testers. And I said, when's the last time we ever spoke to our testers about security? Hang on a minute. We'd never talked to our testers about security testing. Why not? Let's just go talk. And it was only through that. And sort of stuff. How do you explain security testing to a tester who, and through that and discovering just how big the chasm is at the moment in the industry between your security tester, your pen tester, who are almost considered to be gods at this point. They're like mystical voodoo hackers and laws. There's a lot of mysticism going about, and your actual normal day-to-day testers who, doing all of the other testing, which has indeed have a lot of overlap. And so it's only through connecting all those individual dots that at first seemed completely not connected, and yet managing to break through to the point where we've had our testers turn around and saying, actually, I now understand. And actually, it's not that difficult. It's not something that is, this higher thing. It's a bit like starting to cook. You just have to get into it. Yes, you're not going to make a world-class dish at the first, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't start cooking. And it's in that same spirit at the moment that we are making some real headway. I've actually just spoke to a colleague this morning about it. He said, wow, that is actually, that potential could change a lot of things, and it does open up a lot of different new avenues.
That's great. Awesome. Well, I think we're just about out of time here. So any final last words of wisdom or that you'd like to share with our audience here at SnyKon about your journeys to build out AppSec programs?
I'm going to keep it short and just say, feel free to reach out, because I could talk for days, and it is probably very specific topics that you're after. It's probably very specific challenges that you are currently facing. And I'm happy to talk about any of and all of them, but just ring me up.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Stephan.
Yeah, I would say take care of your developers. Your developers are going to take care of your security.
Yeah, I think one useful thing is if you're creating a security engineering function, is to clearly define what your activities are, and then make that information available to the team so they know what to expect. So you don't have to be explaining the same thing over and over again. And it can be actively sought out when people need to. So yeah, clearly defining what it is you're doing and making it easily available.
Right. Well, thank you so much to Nick and Stephan and Gagan for all of this great advice and for being so open about your own journeys. And we'll hand it back to the MC.